Hello everyone and welcome to This is America. Today's guest is the Fromer-Wexler Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute, Matthew Levitt. But first, here are the top US news for the week. US President Donald Trump said Monday that he would give Hamas a chance to honor the Gaza truce deal with Israel, but warned the group would be eradicated if it fails to do so. "We made a deal with Hamas that they're going to be very good, they're going to behave, they're going to be nice," Trump told reporters at the White House as he hosted Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. "And if they're not, we're going to go and we're going to eradicate them if we have to. They'll be eradicated and they know that." Top US envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday after weekend violence threatened to wreck a fragile US brokered ceasefire in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu met earlier with Special Envoys Steve Witkoff and US President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner on the developments and updates in the region. Shosh Bedrosian, spokeswoman for the Prime Minister's office, told journalists. US President Donald Trump admitted on Friday that Vladimir Putin may be playing for time by agreeing to a new summit, but said he believed his Russian counterpart wanted a deal to end the Ukraine war. "I've been played all my life by the best of them, and I came out really well. So it's possible. A little time, it's all right. But I think that I'm pretty good at this stuff. I think that he wants to make a deal." US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says he believes trade tensions with China have eased after a flare-up over Beijing's announcement of tighter export controls on the critical rare earth industry. "I think that things have de-escalated. I hope that China will show the respect that we have shown them," Bessent tells reporters at the White House. And that's your US recap of the week. Why did Trump choose Hungary for the peace summit? A surprising choice for a historic meeting. US President Donald Trump has chosen Budapest, Hungary as the host city for his upcoming peace summit with Vladimir Putin, and the decision is raising eyebrows across Europe. So why Hungary? First, personal ties. Trump and Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban have long praised each other. Trump calls Hungary a safe and well-run country and says he trusts Orban, a leader often at odds with the European Union over his friendly stance toward Russia. That rapport made Budapest an easy pick. The Kremlin too welcomed the choice, noting Orban's good relations with both Trump and Putin. Second, symbolism. Budapest was the site of the 1994 Budapest Memorandum, where Ukraine gave up its nuclear arsenal in exchange for security guarantees, a promise shattered by Russia's later invasion. Holding a new peace summit there adds a layer of historical weight. Third, neutral ground. Unlike most EU capitals, Hungary has kept a more independent line and calling for negotiations instead of escalation. That made it one of the few European venues both sides could accept. But the choice is not without controversy. Critics say Hungary's closeness to Moscow undermines its neutrality. Still, for Trump, it offers what he calls a safe and friendly stage, one he hopes he can set the tone for a new peace effort in Europe. The Budapest summit is expected to take place later this month, with the world watching whether it marks a real step toward ending the war. It's with great pleasure that I welcome my guest, the Fromer-Wexler Senior Fellow at the Washington Institute, Matthew Levitt. Dr. Levitt, thank you for being with us. Let's jump right in. What is the best way to ensure that the current ceasefire in Gaza doesn't collapse within weeks?
First of all, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. The ceasefire is a tremendous accomplishment. The return of hostages, the end of a devastating war and the beginning of what should be massive humanitarian support flooding into Gaza. But Hamas has immediately pushed its own forces in behind Israeli military withdrawal. It has begun revenge attacks against fellow Palestinians. It has announced that it will not disarm in direct contravention to the Trump 20-point plan. And it is insisting on having some role in what comes next. Leave the role in government to phase two. It's a huge problem, also in direct contravention to the 20-point plan, but it's a phase two issue. Phase one is about the release of all of the hostages, including all of the dead hostages, which was supposed to be done within 72 hours and is still going on. Mm-hmm. And Hamas is not supposed to be deploying throughout areas that the Israelis have withdrawn from, let alone butchering fellow Palestinians. Now, over the past couple of days, you've had a couple of Palestinian Hamas attacks against the Israelis. Reportedly, there are some Hamas fighters stuck in tunnels on the Israeli side of what's now being called the Yellow Line, and that's led them to fight the Israelis. What we need is for there to actually be a ceasefire, for Hamas to stop shooting at Israeli soldiers. The Israelis will then not feel the need to retaliate. But you have three senior U.S. officials on the ground in Israel now, including Vice President Vance, to ensure that the phase one sticks and we can actually try and get to phase two. I have concerns about phase two, but in the moment, the most important thing is making sure that phase one continues, the ceasefire sticks, and we can get to phase two.
How might the Gaza ceasefire impact the broader regional dynamics, particularly Hezbollah's calculus in Lebanon and Iran's influence across its proxy networks?
So the end of this war has tremendous potential benefit throughout the region. The end of concerns about spillover effects, a further defeat of the Iran's ring of fire, which has fizzled out. For Lebanon, for Hezbollah, there's obviously a concern that perhaps the United States really is serious this time about enforcing ceasefires. As we saw Hezbollah do in Gaza, we've seen Hamas do in Gaza, we've seen Hezbollah in Lebanon doing things to breach the ceasefire, and the Israelis continuing to attack Hezbollah on a regular basis, especially in the south. Hezbollah, like Hamas, has said it will not disarm. There are even reports that you've reported on that Hezbollah drew LAF forces into an arms depot so that they could blow it up with LAF forces there. If, in fact, the United States truly is committed to trying to get these ceasefires and enforce these ceasefires and put the weight of the United States and of President Trump himself behind them, then a group like Hamas, a group like Hezbollah, they have to think twice about pushing the envelope, especially at a time when their patron, Iran, is on its own back foot, having to deal with the effects of the 12-day war, the deep, deep Israeli intelligence penetration, the attacks on their nuclear program, their ballistic missile program, etc. So there is an opportunity now, not one that's going to come easy, but an opportunity now to empower the Lebanese government and the Lebanese armed forces in Lebanon, to empower the international community and the Palestinian political echelon outside of Hamas to build an interim technocratic government that does not include Hamas, that is disarming Hamas, and that can actually provide for the needs of the people of Gaza, where potentially, both in Gaza and in Lebanon, again, not easy, but potentially you could get to a situation where these ceasefires actually stick and legitimate governments are able to assert a monopoly over the use of force.
Is Hezbollah recalibrating its posture or doubling down to preserve its resistance narrative despite the costs to Lebanon?
Look, Hezbollah, self-proclaimed resistance organization that subscribes to the Iranian principle of walayat al-faqih, the rule of the jurisprudent, and to the Iranian revolution. So they are not going to simply roll back just because they're under pressure. They are going to find ways to reestablish themselves, to build a quote-unquote culture of resistance. That may mean less fighting Israel in the moment because they understand the nature of Israeli retaliation right now. It does mean that Hezbollah will do other things like trying to get Hamas to carry out international attacks. 3 different Hamas plots have been foiled in Europe. These have been tied to Hamas operational Qassam brigades leaders in Lebanon who have ties to Hezbollah. And just because Hezbollah is not firing rockets at Israel doesn't mean it's not trying to rebuild its capabilities. That is both weapons depots, it's Green Without Borders, quote unquote, environmental organization, which was designated as a terrorist entity by the United States, and its facility is bombed by Israel. We see Hezbollah trying to resurrect itself even along the blue line in the south, which is in direct violation to the ceasefire. Hezbollah is not going to change its spots just because it's in a bad situation.
Would you say that Lebanon is ready or will sign a peace deal with Israel soon, given the recent events in the region?
I think what we can say for sure is that there are more people in Lebanon who would like to sign something with Israel, whether it's a full-fledged peace agreement or something short of that. But there still is a lot of legwork that needs to be done within Lebanon, in particular to make sure that the spoilers like Hezbollah will not be able to undermine such an agreement. And the Israelis did a great job undermining the two big baskets of threats that Hezbollah has posed to Israel, rockets and forward deployed weapons along the blue line. But Hezbollah still has thousands of fighters and plenty of small arms and presents a very acute threat to its opponents in Lebanon. And we see Hezbollah not only doing things, as we've discussed, to try and resurrect its military capabilities, but also beginning to prepare for the elections in May. It really does not want to lose its political power. So I think that there is an opportunity. I don't see this happening in the near term, but it's a tremendous break with past precedent that there is within Lebanon a significant constituency and a government that is interested in trying to put the permanent state of war to rest, to demarcate an official border, and to end this state of belligerency that would be of tremendous value to both Lebanon and Israel. At the end of the day, nobody in Lebanon except the most hardcore Hezbollah leaders wanted this war with Israel that Hezbollah started on October 8th, 2023, both because of the political and economic crises in Lebanon, and are quite worried about the fact that Hezbollah has been able to make decisions of war and peace, life and death for all Lebanese, acting at its own and Iran's behest, not at the behest of the greater Lebanese people.
But, okay, given everything that you just said, would you say that Hezbollah's disarmament can be achieved through political negotiation, or it will only happen under external pressure, or through an open war with Israel?
I very much hope there is no open war. That's not what anybody wants. But I also don't think that it's an either or political effort or a forced effort. I don't see Hezbollah simply saying, you know what, you can have my weapons. Mm-hmm. They've done that with some small arms. I don't see them doing that overall, period. Politically, alone, this won't work. There needs to be an enforcement mechanism. Whether that's what the Israelis are doing, whether that's what the pressure that President Trump is putting on, or others, there's going to have to be a real force that is going to press Hezbollah to understand that it is going to have to give up its weapons one way or the other, and that will give power to the political process, where if they feel they're going to have to do it anyway, they might as well get something for it politically. But I don't see Hezbollah just saying, you know what, we're just going to become a political party and we're going to give up all our guns and we're going to change the way we are. And, we just won't be a resistance organization, a terrorist organization anymore. That is naive.
Matthew Levitt, thank you so much for being my guest on This is America, and thank you for sharing those insights. Coming up next, we take a closer look at California's oil capital that hopes for a renaissance under Trump. Here's our report by Maroon Shehin.
Every 5 years, the fading town of Taft, California, comes alive for Oil Dorado, a festival celebrating its golden age at the heart of America's oil rush. Thousands gather to relive the spirit of the Wild West, with parades of cowboys, antique cars, and floats featuring oil pumps. This year, 9 months into Donald Trump's second term, the tone has shifted from nostalgia to renewal. The president has pledged to unleash American energy, rolling back environmental regulations and boosting domestic oil production. Located about 200 kilometers north of Los Angeles, Taft was founded in 1910 atop California's largest oil field. Today, Kern County, where the town sits, still produces more than 70% of the state's oil. Its economy, from schools to public services, relies heavily on petroleum revenues. But California has committed to ending oil drilling by 2045 as part of its climate goals. The state is also facing growing climate-related challenges, from deadly wildfires to severe droughts affecting its vast agricultural sector. With Trump's policies aiming to revive domestic energy production and reduce regulatory barriers, towns like Taft may finally see a resurgence of the industry that built them, offering a renewed path for economic growth and local prosperity under his leadership.
That's it for today's episode. The replay is available on all of This is Beirut's platforms. Thank you all for watching and see you next Wednesday.